Thank you, Mr. MC. I'm afraid to say MC because of all the side meanings to it, but thank you so much. History of any society, any people, is extremely important, and I'm sure Father Albert and other clergy people here will agree. Were it not for history, we would not have the Holy Scriptures. When it comes to people with disabilities in the Caribbean, yes indeed, there is a rich history. We do not have time to cover it all, so I will try just to zero in some of the salient things that happened as it relates to St. Lucia. However, the first seed was sown in the English-speaking Caribbean by a man from Guyana. His name was James Alves. He traversed the Caribbean by sailboats. His mission was to start services for people living with blindness and vision impairment. The first island which responded positively was Trinidad and Tobago. And the first service was started in Trinidad on the 18th of May, 1914. It is still known today as Founders Day. St. Lucia had to wait quite a bit later than that. Thanks to the Women Association of St. Lucia, 2 boys were sent to school in Trinidad. One came back in the early 60s, and it was him which was one of the pioneers for education for people with blindness and vision impairment in St. Lucia. The Royal Commonwealth Society for the Blind intervened and encouraged the St. Lucia government at the time to start their St. Lucia School and Workshop for the Blind. And Mr. Stephen Kennedy Edmund was the gentleman that came back to serve his country. And Miss Eldra Lancico, the late Eldra Lancico, was charged with that responsibility. A committee was formed which was called the St. Lucia Committee for the Welfare of the Blind. And it was given the responsibility of operating the school and workshop. It was this committee which was transformed to the St. Lucia Blind Welfare Association, inaugurated in 1972, and is governed under the St. Lucia Blind Welfare Association Act No. 9 of 1972, slightly revised in 2018. It was followed by a number of others, namely the St. Lucia Society for the Deaf, the St. Lucia Association for the Mentally Retarded. They all started somewhere around the 70s and early 80s. And each of these agencies were focusing within their own silos. The International Year of the Child in 1979 provided the opportunity where the 3 agencies got together and had a massive public education drive to try to educate St. Lucians about the disability factor. At the end of IYC, it went back same more. So when the IYDP International Year for Persons with Disabilities in 1981 came, we were determined to make a change. Yours truly was given the responsibility of heading that movement to ensure the good spirit of IYDP was continued. To ensure this happened, the St. Lucia Blind Welfare Association staged a walk around the island in 5 days. The participants were blind, vision impaired, and volunteers, sighted volunteers, also included volunteers from outside of St. Lucia, like from the US Peace Corps and others. The aim was to challenge St. Lucian to come face to face with the disability factor. We succeeded. it opened the way for the formation of the National Council of and for Persons with Disabilities, which was launched on September 21 in 1981. The St. Lucia Blind Welfare Association provided the how it housed NCPD for the first few years of existence until it was able to acquire its own quarters. The NCPD, the aim was to ensuring that while you had the parent agencies housed in Castries, at the community level, this ability problem will be tackled together. So a network of district councils were formed right around the island. And to ensure that we were continuing with the inclusive agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, toward the end of the 80s into the 90s, we recognized that there was nothing addressing the needs of older citizens with disabilities. There was an organization called HelpAge St. Lucia. So the St. Lucia Blind Welfare Association formed a network of Club 60s around the island, and in the middle 90s amalgamated with HelpAge St. Lucia and the National Council of and for Persons with National Council of and for Older Persons was born. Elvina Phillips Ravino, who was the president of the HelpAge St. Lucia, was the first president of the council. This was intended to narrow the generation gap. In our vision, we saw that a country cannot progress if it's not able to unify the wisdom of the older and the vibrancy and strength of its young. So we sought to bridge that gap. Club 60, we thought, was the answer to that. The Club 60s were included not just older people, but also younger ones. And people were being trained to understand and appreciate the aging process. You do not just get up today and you are old. You are aging from conception. Ladies and gentlemen, with regard to the education, I know that the esteemed gentleman will be speaking later about that, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. But all I can say is that in the early 80s, St. Lucia Blind Welfare Association decided that the children must be educated within the least restrictive environment. The position paper was, to that effect, was written by the late Joyce Swanson, Mrs. Joyce Swanson. And the Ministry of Education accepted the call, and mainstream education began. The first sets of children was mainstreamed at the Anglican school. I remember speaking to Lion Keith Wicks, who was the principal, and his response was, "Tony, I know you are blind, but now I see you mad. Because you're saying that we can educate blind children in the regular system. But you say it can be done, we will give it a try." And so it did. Today, children, blind, vision impaired, are mainstreamed around the island. In respect to eye health, again, St. Lucia Blind Welfare Association sound the trumpet. And that because with the help of the Caribbean Council for the Blind and Vision Impaired, we were in the habit of training ophthalmologists across the Caribbean. But all of them, most of them, would also have their own private practice. However, this first paper on real blindness prevention and eye health was presented in Jamaica by Dr. St. Catherine, who was the chief medical officer at the time. And this led the way because that in the 90s, a study which was commissioned by Help the World See concluded that most people could not afford what obtains in eye health. So that opens the way for the St. Lucia Blind Welfare Association, with the help of the Caribbean Council for the Blind, to establish Eye Care St. Lucia. Leading up to that, the Ministry of Health and the SLBWA signed an MOU spelling out the responsibilities of both partners in respect to eye health. And today, Eye Care St. Lucia is here. To support the mainstream program, the St. Lucia Blind Welfare Association, with the help of West Virginia University, put in a case find in the school system and back it up with a program called Kids in Sight. To date, hundreds of children's eyesight has been restored, or at least the problem minimized because of this effort. Ladies and gentlemen, we talk about inclusivity. We are saying that inclusion must be done all the way. From our standpoint, from the St. Lucia Blind Welfare Association standpoint and its derived network, inclusion must happen at both ends. Okay? So that is why we have been relentless in pushing this inclusive agenda. The efforts, we realize that for it to succeed, there must be a conducive legislative environment. So then, back in the late 80s and the 90s, going up into the 2000s, real effort is made, which helped we were part of the move which encouraged the development of the UNCRPD, which you have heard a lot about, which was ratified recently in St. Lucia. And we also campaigned for a policy on a national policy on disabilities. The first draft was drafted by the consultant Ezra Jean-Baptiste. And as I say so, I must also recognize the significant work of the ILO, the International Labour Organization, with the network of ministries of labor. A lot was done, and that one is hoping with the new drive that all of these works will be actualized and enacted in 2025. Now, ladies and gentlemen, they ask you to give history, but you are limited by time. Are they serious about really getting the history? The history is not history if it is not impacting current, and current is not current if it fails to impact the future. So there must be that link. And as you listen to the various presentations, you will see that link. The St. Lucia is not the tail. From all levels, St. Lucia have played its part. We mentioned Caribbean Council for the Blind. We should also mention the Caribbean Association on Mental Retardation. There was a unit in St. Lucia called the East Caribbean Unit on Mental Retardation, which was housed at Donata School. One recall names like Mary Jane Charles, who is no longer with us, Catherine Robert Poole, and many others. The St. Lucia Society for the Deaf, there was also a regional connection, which they were very much part of. Caribbean Association, the hearing impaired, and so on. St. Lucia have been making and playing its part, but until St. Lucians realize that we are given a lot And if we do not use what we have, we would be asked question by the Creator. So I say, Happy International Day. There is a lot more to share, but as these activities go on, we will have opportunities to share a little more. Thank you.